Hi, my name is Kendrea Mekkah. I am a graduate student at Full Sail University and I'm also a full-time artist. This is a little bit about my story, I guess, answering some questions that were given to me by Bianca Collins. Um, Name the year, era, and generation in which you were born. Where were you born? And what can you tell me about the impact of local history and events that may have influenced your life choices? Oh, wow. Era, generation, there's so many labels that we've learned to put on things. Um, 1978, Georgetown, Guyana. So that's coming to the United States probably around 81 or something like that. I think my parents finally got the visa to come to the States. So I was probably about 3 years old. So I grew up in the hip hop generation, Generation X, um, the crack generation. I mean, crack was prevalent in Brooklyn in the 1980s. There were a lot of crack babies and kids growing up without um, parents, either a mother or a father, and a lot of chaos, it seemed like, because my culture, my immediate family was very close knit and very we would cling to each other. It was very family oriented, very community oriented. So it seemed like the environment that we were in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, was a little bit different from the culture of my home. Um, as far as local history, um, the Jim Jones massacre was a huge piece of American Guyanese history, and it happened right around the time that I was born, and I came to this country when I was about 3 years old. So it was still, I'm probably fresh in people's minds when my parents came to this country. So I'm sure that it affected the way that they were perceived when they were looking for work, specifically my mother, because she worked for a bank and having a thick accent. I mean, even today, many people listen to her talk or listen to Caribbean people in general talk, and everything is sort of like a subsidiary of Jamaica, and Guyana is not Jamaica. Neither is Trinidad, neither is Grenada or any of the other countries. And so the fact that a lot of people didn't even know what the country was, where it was, would mistake it for Ghana, which is in Africa, of course, many times. I'm sure all of that affected how my parents were perceived, how I was perceived, and eventually the choices that I would make and how I would perceive America and my place in America. Um, Nothing seemed linear. I've always lived a dichotomy in my life. So I think that having to exist in one world and behave a different way at home or have a different set of standards at home seemed normal to me from a very, very young age. And I don't think I realized that until later on. But I definitely think that that had an impact on all of my life choices because I have gone back and forth between either being very self-conscious or being very confident in being different. And I've always been different in some way or maybe. How did my parents make a living? What did they teach me about work? And how did they influence my career decisions? How would I evaluate their culture? And how did their culture and what they learned affect what they gave to me? For most of my life, I had two working parents. My mother worked for a bank for 25 years. My father is by trade an interior designer, and he can do everything from molding your ceilings to drywalling to wallpaper to reupholstering furniture. But as I'm learning as an artist, that is feast or famine living. And with children, you can't rely on that. So he had several different jobs in addition to that, real estate, fixing computers. So it was always a culture of hard work. And I think that that's just part of who, especially my mother. My mother is up at 6 in the morning. I can't remember a time when she wasn't, even when she doesn't have to go to work. That's the kind of work ethic that my parents instilled in me, and I think that's the kind of work ethic that their parents instilled in them. So it made me a go getter. It made me have a lot of drive. And my mother always told me that nothing comes easy in life. So I was always trained that I was going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And the things that I had against me were always in the forefront of my mind. They always reminded me of all the things that I had against me, being black, being a woman, being an immigrant here, all those things. And having to work twice as hard and not to complain, just to do better. So that's the kind of work ethic that my parents instilled in me. And as far as affecting my career choices, it affected my career choices in a great way because I felt like I had to achieve. I had to, and achieving by, I think, the way I was raised, that definition was getting a job, being corporately successful in some way, having a 9 to 5 with benefits and a 401k. That's where my where my gauge was for success. So that's where it was set for me. And as I got older, I had a different bar that I had set for myself, because they put me in a position where I was educated and I had choices. In your employment history, how do you resolve the dilemma of what kinds of work you always admired or aspired to do with economic realities? I wasn't quite sure. I just always knew that I was creative and I was outspoken, and I wanted to do something that utilized both of those. When I went to college, I had this wonderful idea that I was going to be a journalist, but my mother reminded me of the reality that journalists don't make a lot of money. And I was more or less encouraged to seek out something that was going to have more regular paycheck. And I got into fashion. I've always loved fashion, and the creativity behind that really inspired me. And I had this great idea that if I could be a buyer, then I would be able to have the best of both worlds. That I'd have a corporate job with regular benefits and a regular paycheck, and I'd be able to be creative. And then when I started in the industry, I realized how much creativity is squelched in the behind the corporate politics, that you have to go through. So I got really disenchanted, and after 9/11, I really decided that you know what, you can die at any moment. You really can. You can. Really not have tomorrow, and I want every moment of my life to be spent working for a purpose. And I didn't feel like the job that I had at that time, working as a buyer, though I was making a lot of money for my age, it wasn't fulfilling to me. It wasn't giving back in a way that I thought was worth my time and effort, the amount of time and effort that I was putting into that job. So at the ending of that year, I left and I went to graduate school in search of something better. And in the process of all that, I began performing my poetry more, sharing it, and started on slam teams. And it's all been a long, wonderful journey since then, coming into myself as an artist. And now I am a full time artist, and I don't regret this path one bit. Despite the lack of health insurance, I've been able to write a book, record an album, perform internationally to sell out crowds. I've been able to raise funds for underprivileged groups and inspire and work to uh, bring equality for women in this country and abroad. Um, so I don't think any of this would be possible if I was sitting in a cubicle. As far as meshing, my goals with my economic realities, I simply, go to bed at night and know that I'm in control of my own destiny. And I think I like it better that way because I've had it both ways and I like it better this way. Um, what kinds of jobs are unacceptable to you and why? if you feel fulfilled with what you're doing, then you're doing the right thing. If you are cussing people out at your job, you're probably not doing a job that's right for you. There is something out there for everyone, unless you're completely lazy, in which case, get off your behind, you're doing the wrong things. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong job or what's an acceptable or unacceptable form of work. I think if you can be proud of the job that you're doing, then you're probably doing the right things. In what ways would you like to continue the family tradition in which you were born? Well, the tradition that I would continue in my family is cooking. I'm actually about to do that right now for my own family. Is start some dinner. So I think food and everything that happens in a kitchen is really important to children and their connection to that nurturing spirit that is mother. And my mother is the matriarch of my family, as was my grandmother. So I think that cooking and the things that take place in a kitchen are specifically very important. The stories that get told down, the oral traditions, that is important. Those memories, they end up manifesting themselves in different parts of my life. So I think that the stories you get in the kitchen from your grandmother are really important, or from your mom. How do you want your own family to differ from your family of birth? Um, I suppose the thing that I would do differently from what happened in my family is eating together. As much as we cooked, I felt like we were always entertaining for the huge extended family. And as an immediate family, we didn't necessarily always have the time to sit down together to eat dinner. And so that's something that I try to do with my family. With my significant other, he knows that that's very, very important to me. We sit and eat dinner together every single night. If I'm touring or something like that, we call each other, we talk on the phone. We at least have one meal together. And I think that the unity that you have around the kitchen table is really important, and the sense of worth that gives you is something that's lacking in a lot of families today. No one feels important. You're sitting at the dinner table, and your mother or your child doesn't think enough of you to listen to what you have to say about your day. They much rather be tweeting or watching the television. That if you're not important to your family, who are you going to be important to? If this is your first line of defense against the rest of the world. So I think that's important. And I don't know why we can't fix these problems. I think that it has to do with us, again, feeling important as people and not seeing our role in the grand scheme of things. We all have something to contribute to the human experience. So by being robbed of that within our families, we don't think that what we have to give is that worthwhile, it's that important. So we take our gifts and our purpose and our jobs and our lives even sometimes for granted. It's not that important, and that becomes detrimental to the rest of our human family. What is the ideal family? I don't know what the ideal family is, to tell you the truth. I don't think I had an ideal family, but just like the ideal job, how do you define that? Everything is different for everyone, so you can't have one size fit all type of approach to family. I do think that family has certain responsibilities to each other. I think that your family should prepare you for the world that we all live in, and your family should prepare you for your responsibility to this world that we all live in. So, as far as the ideal family, I think the ideal family puts out people that give as much as they receive and respect everyone's value in this world. What is your attitude toward your own ethnic background, and how has that influenced your family or work arrangement? I feel that my ethnic background, Guyanese, I think that Caribbean people in general are beautiful people, strong people, musical people, stylish, fashionable people. Um, but like all other people in the world, we can be judgmental, we can be exclusionary. We can be racist, just like any other group. I think that there's a lot of misogyny. I grew up in a very male-dominated culture, and I think that there's a lot of misogyny in most Caribbean cultures and most Caribbean households. So I think that as a woman growing up in that, it made me question my own self worth. Fortunately, I went to an all girls school, and that gave me a totally different perspective of what it was to be a woman and what my place was in this world and my value as a person of color and as a woman in this world. So I think that the push for education that put me in a private school was a positive thing. But the things that were unique and different, like women's lib and the right to choose your sexual partner and things like that, those were new things to me that I learned when I was like in high school or something like that. It's not encouraged or even accepted in most Caribbean places for you to be gay or anything other than straight. So for me, the idea that there were people like this out there, that was okay, that was new and different to me. And I think that in my culture, that's something that I would definitely change. I think we should embrace people for who they are, regardless of, their sexual orientation, the shade, whether they're light skin or dark skin, all those little things. So as far as how do I feel about my culture, I think that as a whole, my culture is beautiful. I love it. I'm proud of it. It made me a wonderful cook, a brilliant businesswoman, a brilliant artist, a free-thinking individual. So I think as a whole, my culture is beautiful. But I think that there are definitely things that could change. What aspects of your culture do you feel the need to reveal or conceal? I don't ever really feel the need to reveal a great deal about myself. I live my life very publicly as an artist. I'm on Twitter, all the social networking platforms. I have a website and a blog. I speak out and perform regularly, so I feel like my life is very public, and it's very clear to get a lot of the important views that I want to share from my art. So I don't always feel the need in public forums to share a whole lot more personal information, because I feel like there's a lot out there already. But as far as my culture, the things that I always reveal are, my love of music, my love of dance hall, regardless of my issues with the homophobic lyrics and things like that. I've always been a big fan of dance hall, a big fan of reggae, soca, calypso, Caribbean music. The things that I feel like I should conceal. I feel sometimes like the fact that I lived a part of my life as a bisexual female, that's something that's not accepted a lot by my people. So I feel comfortable in America, in this, where I live, a lot. Sometimes I feel more comfortable revealing that part of myself in an American environment, whereas in my own culture, around my own people, I don't feel that that would necessarily be received in the same way. I think that that is, how it's affected my decisions, or, again, it's just something that I would change. I think it's very repressive to not be able to be yourself. How much has your parents' ethnic heritage determined the outcome of their lives, and how does that contrast with your own situation? My parents, especially my mother, tried to take control of their own destiny. They grew up in what is considered a third world country, and came here and put their children through school, all private school. And, I think that in my mind, they're successful people. They beat the odds in so many huge ways. My mother worked for a bank for 25 years and had every job, from being a secretary to being a teller to working with $1 million investigations, for a bank. And I think that was against so many odds. I watched her work through, putting me through school and work and getting a degree after she had already been to college in Guyana. So I think that the watching them work hard um, made them made me want to be a success, and I want my children to see the same thing in me. I want them to see me working hard, and I want them to see me fulfilled by my work. And I think that maybe that's the part that I didn't see from my parents, that I would like my children to learn from me, is that yes, you do have to work hard in life, but it does not have to be, it can be a labor of love. It doesn't have to be, something that you hate. There is another alternative than working for someone or getting up every day and doing something that you hate in order to get the things that you want out of life. You can actually do what you love and what you put here to do and what you're talented at, and get joy from that and still pay your bills. I have a pretty nice life. I can afford my life, most importantly, and I do what I love. So I want my children to be able to do that. Whatever it is that they want to do, I want them to be fulfilled from it and be able to make a living at it and come home to something that is more than just money. Be able to come home fulfilled like I do every day. The legacy that I would give to my children is that laughter is more important than money, and that if you surround yourself with family and friends that are good and positive, you will have what is good and positive in life. And that is more important than any position you could ever hold, any job you could ever have, and it's more valuable than any amount of money that you could ever make. So surround yourself with love and light.